you can't have these types of conversations that we're having now.
I would like to have my gender critical beliefs protected, please, so I can go off and spout shit all over the internet and say that they're really awful and it's not a safe place to come out, so they just go and hide again.
It's too late to apologise.
Trans people have become a punch bag, a topic for debate, and we haven't got a safe space to even say the words.
The people who seem to be most bothered about this are middle-aged men. Everyone wants like a yes or no, or everyone wants like a black and white, it's this or it's that. The world doesn't work like that. There's this trans lady, her experience through being trans has led to her being homeless because there's been no safety net for her. It only takes those reasonable people to start thinking, well, actually, like, you know, I don't like trans people because they're getting all this attention, or I don't like immigrants because they're getting our houses. But it's those micro steps that lead us to fascism or to hatred. And this is why the Conservative Party cannot be allowed near 10 Downing Street. It's my job and the Liberal Democrats' job to wipe them out and make sure they never come back again.
But no one's being brave enough to say that, Carl.
Yeah.
How do we get these people to be brave enough to say it? So nice to meet you. I'm Dr. Helen Webberley. I'm founder of Gender GP, and I've spent the last 10 years kind of working with trans people. So lovely to have you. Do you want to say who you are?
Yeah, well, lovely to be here, Helen. I've heard a lot about your work, and I'm sure a lot of people that I am friends with are very appreciative of what you do. My name's Carl. I'm the leader of the Liberal Democrats in Liverpool, and a party that's proudly pro-trans rights, pro-LGBT rights, and stands up for the marginalised in society, which I think most of our politicians these days are a little bit scared of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, you know, you say the word like trans rights, and it's just, they're the same rights that everyone should have. And everyone's like, oh, what is it about trans rights that you want? And I'm like, they're just rights. It's basic human rights. And they're not even any different, but they're not. And I think, you know, what I've seen over the last 10 years is that trans people have become a punch bag, a darts board, a topic for debate, and it just makes me sick. And,
no, 100%.
You know.
And I think it's like, as you say, a human decency point, isn't it? And every trans person that I've ever met has never wanted to be treated special. They've never wanted any exclusive treatment. It's just to be treated in the same way and with the same level of respect as anyone else. And I've got a lot of kind of time and sympathy for someone who is either questioning their identity or you know, wants to understand themselves a little bit better, and through that process, you know, they might identify in a different way. And I say that as a liberal because fundamentally my philosophy in life is that people should be given the freedom to live the life that they want. Now, that doesn't mean you impose on anyone else's freedoms, but in my experience, no trans person or no member of the LGBT community has ever wanted to do that. And I just think we need to get away from that. Stop the likes of, you know, Piers Morgan and others from stirring up that hate.
Yeah. And I think you're so right, you know, that giving people a space to explore themselves. And actually what we've got is a space where people are terrified to mention the fact that they are questioning their gender, or that their gender is completely different to what everyone else thinks it is. And we haven't got a safe space to even say the words, never mind do that exploration. And that's the pain that I've seen. You know, and if someone dares to come out, it's like, it's almost like you've got to do it all. There's no room to find out who you are. And I think there's no experiment, there's no see what it's like, because you've been put in this category all your life. And it's really sad.
Oh, 100%. And I think we both know, through knowing people in the trans community and the LGBT community, that, you know, there's no black and white with this type of identity, is that it's very much a spectrum. And I think that life is fantastic because we live on that spectrum.
Yeah.
And most people that I've known from that part of society have had to go on a journey. And for some people, that might be a very quick journey, as you say, and, you know, because of certain circumstances, they would need to, you know, go from 0 to 100. But for other people, that journey is a very slow one, and one where they need to understand themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, there's trans people who I know who've come out as trans when they're in the 40s or 50s or 60s. And I just think, in one way, it's sad that they've had to live a life where they've not felt like they could be themselves. But in another way, I celebrate the fact that they're brave and that they've said, I'm 60, but this is who I am. And I feel like I can come out and explore that now. And most of the time, I find that the community, particularly in places like Liverpool and elsewhere, are very, very accepting of that and celebrate that as well.
Yeah, and it should be something to be celebrated. Being honest and true to your actual real self. I mean, what could be better than that, really, honestly? And, I remember we had I think, 95-year-old surgeon, male surgeon, who'd lived as male all his life. And like his parents never knew, his family never knew. And he was coming up to death. And he was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm actually a woman. And she came out just for the very, very last few years of her life so that she could die authentically.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's giving me goosebumps now, but it's just so beautiful and lovely.
No, it is beautiful.
And I was thinking again when you said that I met a trans woman who, she was, I think, probably maybe 40-ish when she transitioned and told her family, told everybody, and that was it. And so she went from being a very masculine kind of male to completely female. And then after a few years, she loved it. She was living her best life. And after a few years, she was like, actually, I just want to tone it back slightly. Like this 100% kind of beautiful female identity wasn't fitting right. And she just wanted to just pull back just a little bit and let some of her old maleness, if you like, come through. Yeah. And I think that's what we should be letting people do. Where on your spectrum that you were talking about, where do you fit most comfortably? And it might move. And that's absolutely beautiful and lovely.
This is what life is about as well, Helen, isn't it? Is like if you're the same person that you were when you were 18, that you are when you're 35 or 45 or 55, then you're doing something wrong. So I think your identity changes over time as well anyway. So someone who is more feminine at one point in their lives, it's not a bad thing to become more masculine at a different point in your life. And there's a theory, and I'm not going to remember what it's called, but it's a theory that says like all of these different pieces that fit into a person, the same person that you've spoken to at the age of 20 isn't that person at the age of 30, because those different pieces have changed. And there might be certain parts of them that are still the same, but there's a lot of them that's changed fundamentally. This is getting into philosophy, which I studied as a student, and I love it. Like, so it's getting a little bit deep. But if we bring that back to like a real life example, so I am a trustee of Sahia House, which is an LGBTQ plus charity in Liverpool. They do fantastic work. But with them, they organised queer town halls around Liverpool. And I remember they put us in groups on tables, and we were just talking about the issues that face the trans community, the issue that faces the LGBTQ community. And there was a girl there, and she didn't really like say much. And I made a point of just kind of having a little chat with her. And the more I chatted with her, the more she opened up and came out of her shell. And she was trans. And it was kind of like, it was trying to find her place, not only on that table, not only in that community, but in the world as well. And I think sometimes if you give those people the space to flourish and be themselves, they will surprise you with how fantastic they are and how much they've got to contribute. Yeah. So that for me is kind of like the real life example of allowing someone to be themselves and watching them flourish right in front of you.
When I used to do clinics with trans patients, when I was a practicing doctor, I used to see them, the patients coming in and through their transition. So I'd see them right at the beginning when the life was so scary, and then little changes. And sometimes I remember one woman, and she came in like quite frumpy, and because not used to wearing girls' clothes, boys' clothes all her life, quite frumpy. And then I just watched her change, and by the end of it, she was so sassy. Her makeup, her hair, her personality, and that's actually how she was. But it just took time to emerge.
It's the same. It's the same. Like when you and I don't want to comment on women's makeup here because I'm certainly not an expert in that. But it's like when you see young girls, like kind of when they're like 18, 19 and they've just started wearing makeup, and like there's that period, isn't there, where like the kind of I'm not really sure about how to do it, and then it gets better and better and better. And I'm sure kind of, anyone can go through that at any point in their lives if they transition, and it must be like a really nice thing to see that, and kind of understand like how their like fashion sense changes as well, because I suppose you don't only get like the kind of the different fashions that go out in and out of style through like the 70s and 80s and 90s and whatnot, but you get people's own certain fashions that come in and out and witnessing that as well. But there's many like kind of different people that I've met in that community, Helen, and like in Liverpool in particular. If you're going to have a look around this city, you will find some of the most powerful members of that community that you would ever like come across, and I'd be interested in introducing you to a few of them.
Love to.
I'll take you to meet them. And there's I don't know whether you've seen it, the protect the dolls.
Yeah, sure.
Or like there was a specific one for Liverpool which was
nice.
Protect Scouse dolls. So I'll have to get you one of those tops as
definitely.
well. But the girl that did that, I think the girl who was behind it was Connie Frankish, who's a bit of a force of nature as well.
Good.
Yeah. So I'll introduce you to them too.
And I think that's what we need. We need some, I don't know how old these people are that you talk about, but it's lovely to see you being young. And I think what we need is young people, like if my daughter there, she's 22, and she's just like, what is the fuss? What is wrong? Why is everyone getting so upset about it?
Yeah.
All the old people, debating up there, doing this and that and the other. It's like, it doesn't matter. And if you go to university cities, everyone is beautifully colourful. The display is amazing. It's like there's so much variation. Like different people wearing different makeup, nail varnish, clothes, colours, skin, hair, everything. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you've got old people in grey suits going, I don't think we should allow this. I'm like, shut
the
up.
Jacob Rees-Moggs of the world, like an old
up.
Victorian ghost.
Yeah.
But do you know? So that's the best thing about life when you go to like these places where there is so much colour. But I wonder like what you think about this. So I always find that the people that are so, and I find this kind of in little pockets of like my own life, or little pockets of like the city, or little pockets of the UK, the people who seem to be most bothered about this are middle-aged men. And like, I just, for the life of me, can't get my head around that.
I know. Well, do you know what? I do little videos and I put them out there to kind of inspire and teach and show visibility. And I did one yesterday and I was like, listen, all you men out there who are sitting there thinking that you're proudly protecting women from, oh my goodness, trans women. I'm like, thanks, but we don't need you. I don't want you, thank you. Quite happy to get on with being a woman on my own. And if I find something scary, I can find it scary. Yeah. Piss off. And
make sure you keep that
in. but yeah, and they don't understand. And then I tell you who I do wonder about. I wonder about the people that get really vocal. Why are you so bothered about this? What are you hiding? And I saw that in my work with gay people when I was in sexual health back in the 90s and early 200s. And it was often those people who were so fiercely against it that were hiding their own issues or someone in their family, but quite often in themselves. And maybe that's a symptom of the fact that us as humanity have to hide if we're not normal. Yeah. And I actually find that sad, quite sad. But yeah.
I agree. Is it, what's the film? Is it American Beauty?
Yeah.
Where he's so kind of homophobic, but he turns out he's actually gay. And it's the guy in the army, isn't it? And I just think kind of, it baffles me that, because like I think being secure, and this is something I care really passionately about, by the way. So like, I think there is a crisis amongst like young men, and sometimes men in general, and a crisis of masculinity for me. And from one side, like, I don't like the criticism of masculinity in the sense like, oh, it's all toxic, because that's not true. But I think what secure masculinity is about like protection, is about understanding, is about making sure that your family feel like safe and feel comfortable within themselves. And I think for some reason, like, we've allowed certain men, like the likes of Piers Morgan and others, to hijack masculinity. Like the Andrew Tates of the world are a really good example of that. And I think we need to get back to what masculinity is about. Was it the people who go in the army who have got like really secure, decent masculinity, like want to protect people. And I think if their sons or daughters came out as trans, they would want to make sure that they felt comfortable within themselves. And these kind of, this very small subsection of society that's all of a sudden, like you say, started caring about women's rights, they don't stand for like what most men stand for. And like that's something like I care very passionately about, because for me, like my friends who are trans, my friends who are gay, like I want to stand up for them, not throw them under the bus.
No, absolutely. And, you know, this image that boys shouldn't cry, and, you know, they shouldn't be sensitive and they shouldn't show their feelings. We still do it. I mean, my son, I still do it. I feel ashamed. You know, my son did an Ironman a few months ago. And afterwards he cried. I mean, it was just so hard and tough and emotional. And at the end of his crying, and I was like, oh, and I'm just like, why am I pointing that out?
But it is inbuilt, isn't it? Like, as well. And there's kind of like, I always find, so the place where men are like nicest to each other, I've always found, is in the gym, because like they'll say stuff to each other like, oh bro, like you look massive and you look great. And like that's fine. Like men are really like decent and good with each other when they're around each other. And something that like kind of stuck out to me was like when Paddy the Baddy, like who's the UFC fighter from Liverpool, said after his fight, you know, there's a stigma around like men's mental health and like men talking, or men being sad and men crying. And like, we need to change that. And I think that's part of this whole equation, that if we change that, and if we change, oh, men need to be this way, women need to be that way, then we get away from this whole like, oh, it's so binary, like that you're either one or the other. And we need to have a conversation about how life is wonderful when like you live on a spectrum of kinds of identity. And I think for me, if we lived in the society that acknowledged that, which I think pretty much most young people do, it's like more the older generation that don't, I think we live in a much happier society.
Well, I think, I mean, who would be better to help us than the trans community? Because they will have people who have lived as women who then live as men, or lived as non-binary in the middle or afterwards, you know, so that they have so much to teach us, so much to teach us about what is expected of you when you are a man, and what's expected of you when you live as a woman, but also what your hormone profile does to you. Because I've seen the effects of hormones, of people switching from when they were born and went through puberty, they had male hormones, testosterone hormones, and then we turn that off and give them estrogen, the proper hormone for their gender identity. And they're like, I am seeing the world in a completely different way. And they tell me, you know, they cry at EastEnders when they would never have cried at EastEnders before, and they can't help it. You see a baby being born on YouTube and they're like, oh, like, you know, someone gets married and they're like, and it's just beautiful. And then, and the trans men could teach us so much about what it used to be like when your hormone profile was a girl's profile, and now you've got testosterone. What does it feel like? Why? This is the research we want to be doing, and this is and it makes me so angry when people are like, we haven't got any research on detransitioners. We haven't got any research. We haven't got enough research on the problems with fertility. And I'm like, why don't we concentrate on the positive research? What does it feel like for people when they've transitioned? How accepting was society? How can we make society more accepting for people to explore and go back and try out their birth gender again, or go further next time? That's the research we should be doing. How to help LGBT and other minority groups live their life better. That's the research I want to see. Not how many detransitioners have we got this year, and how many can we get on Piers Morgan's show to tell? You know, I'm like, oh, shut up, please.
I love that though, because it's looking at like the positive aspect of people changing their lives to live the way that they've always felt like they should live. And I think it shows, doesn't it, that those people who like are anti-trans or transphobes, or however you might want to describe them, like want to look at the negative. And you know, there is going to be instances, isn't there, where people do detransition. Like there's going to be instances like in all sorts of aspects of life where things like that happen. But to concentrate on that, for me, is a fallacy, or it's a false argument. And the likes of Pierce and the likes of others who are very kind of anti this, I don't think they want to have like a real decent, intelligent conversation about it.
No.
It's all about like, do you think a woman can have a penis? Do you? And I think kind of it muddies like the water like a little bit, that argument, because it's going back to like what I think is the main problem in politics at the moment, which is everyone wants like a yes or no, or everyone wants like a black and white, it's this or it's that. And I just think like the world doesn't work like that.
No.
And I think, so I went out the other night and went to do like a homeless outreach with this group called Mr. Old Hall Street Kitchen, who just go around, like they've got like a pan of scouse and they give people like some food. And sometimes they're giving people food who've got accommodation or they've got a house and they just haven't got the money to afford food, which is terribly sad. And as I was walking around, there was this trans lady that she come up to me and she was like, oh Carl, like I've seen what you do and that, like, and she was like, you Lib Dem, aren't you? Like she was like, yeah, that's okay then, like you're all right if you Lib Dem. And she was saying like her experience through being trans, through having relationships, like has led to her being homeless because there's been no safety net for her, or there's been no understanding of like what she's experienced. And she'll be the first to tell you that she's made mistakes in her life, as I'm sure anyone would. But because of her experience and because there's like a lack of support there, she's ended up in that position. And it just makes me sad that like we don't live in a society that like acknowledges these people, acknowledges the issues that they go through and helps them with those issues.
Well, it reminds me, I mean, if ever I go to speak at a conference or a talk or anything, or if I put a post online, I will always get comments or DMs or people coming up to me afterwards saying, Dr. Webberley, you saved my life, or Dr. Webberley, you and your husband, you saved my daughter's life. And I'm like, this isn't a life-threatening condition. This is an identity. This is part of this person's human soul and identity. And it, at some stage for them, was life-threatening. And that life had to be saved. And then there are some lives that don't get saved and are lost or are homeless on the streets. And I'm like, this is not right. This is not right. Yeah. And you mentioned politicians earlier. And we need some leadership. And all we get in the mainstream newspapers and on social is trying to pin a leader down and saying, what is a woman? Yeah. Or is a trans woman a woman? Can you be a woman if you have a penis? And if they manage to slip up and say it on camera in a way that can be snipped like that and published, then we've got it. Yeah. That's not the leadership that we need to see. And we shouldn't be allowing that for a start. But the leadership we need to see is, right, come on, everybody welcome. Doesn't matter what colour you are, what you look like, who you are. This is the basic set of rules we live by. Be kind to your neighbour, don't kill people, be nice to dogs and cats on the streets, don't steal. And then otherwise, let's just welcome and include everyone. But no one's being brave enough to say that, Carl. Yeah. How do we get these people to be brave enough to say it?
I think for me, it's about changing the conversation, because I think the sensationalization is what gets people, even fair-minded people. And this is one of the things I say in politics at the moment, is that if we bracket everyone who's either fed up with the government or, fed up with, or says they're going to vote reform, or kind of is a bit questioning of the trans community, then we're doing a disservice to fair-minded people, because there's a lot of those people in that category that will have been pushed there because the media or the likes of like the people who are anti-trans want them and want to push that narrative on them. So I think we need to get away from the sensationalization, and we need to make it more of an issue around community cohesion. So it's like nobody's forcing you to say or do anything. All people want is equal rights, as we've said before, and equal respect. And I think everyone that I've met in that community deserve my respect, because they will not only fight for that community, they will fight for everyone outside of that community as well. And I think politicians make a mistake by falling into the trap of trying to answer a question that isn't asked in a way that is to get an answer that will, help the problem. And I think these politicians, for me anyway, I would just say, why can I just ask you why you're asking me that question? Why are you so interested in the answer to that question? And I think you would find a lot of these people out very, very quickly.
I mean, doctors are struggling with trans people at the moment. They don't know what to do. They don't know what they're allowed to do. So you have a GP in a GP surgery and someone coming in saying, look, I've been on hormones for ages and I've just had a letter from the surgery to say I've got to stop them and you're not going to prescribe for me anymore. And you've been prescribing me these for years. Why? And the doctor's like, yeah, but I don't know. I don't know whether I'm allowed to or not.
Yeah.
And we need the leaders, the doctors' leaders, which is the General Medical Council. We need them to very quickly publish some ground rules. You must help your patient, make them your first concern. And we need that leadership, and we need it in councils, we need it from the politicians, we need it in schools. And, the school guidance that came out just recently saying, look, it's best just not to mention gender identity in schools. Let's just not teach it. Let's not say it's a definite. And I'm like, it's a protected characteristic in the Equality Act. How can you say, let's pretend it might not be real, let's try and push it under the carpet? We need strong leadership. We need to say, right, there are some people whose gender identity doesn't match the sex they were assigned at birth. And that starts very, 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 very young, that realisation. And here is what we do. We educate and we make it right. And I just want to hear the leaders write that down in a piece of paper.
I don't know whether you'll get that, Helen, to be honest. It's good. It's good to think that way. So I think when you've got actors in the world that don't want to have like a civilized conversation, it's very difficult for politicians. So I don't kind of sit here and say that it's an easy answer for a politician to come up with. But I just think, put it back on their toes and say, well, why are you asking me this question?
Yeah. But afterwards, sometimes, if I've slipped up or I didn't answer it as well as I could, I answer it later. And I'm like, this is what I wish I could have said yesterday when I was being interviewed. Do you know what I mean? This is what, if I'd been fast and on my feet, this is what I would have said. And I think that even if it's in writing afterwards, we really need it.
In a strange way, I imagine that there's a lot of trans people out there that have been supported through social media, and social media has been positive for them because they've managed to make those communities. But I also think social media's got a lot to answer for, in the sense that you can't have these types of conversations that we're having now and have people watch the whole of it. It's got to be those 30 seconds. What are they saying there? Oh God, did they just say a woman can have a penis? And it's just, for me, a really bad way to do not only politics but to just do life. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing better than I always used to say there's nothing better than kind of whether it's you have a drink or whatever, there's nothing better than sitting down with your friends and just chewing the fat and just actually getting to the bottom of what might be going on in your life or in their life. And I think society would do a lot better if we put people in them rooms together again and started those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I mean, I was on with Pierce and there were 4 guests, so just 5 people in the room just for half an hour. And I'm like, where's the trans community here? They have one token trans woman on there who's always the other side, and trans women aren't women. I'm like, well, what are you then? You call yourself a trans woman, but you're now made your life and career by saying you're not a woman, and it's just so unhelpful. And we're discussing trans people in sports, and I'm like, where are the trans athletes for this discussion? Why are they excluded? It just makes me angry, but I don't get angry because it doesn't work.
I get angry, Lee. But I think you're right, because I think the thing that these types of people want you to do is to get angry, isn't it? And to be like, oh, see, I told you all along that this person was just angry at the world. And it's not. We want to help these people because we're compassionate about these people, because we've been friends with these people, because we've witnessed what they've gone through, not because we're angry at the world. We're angry at the very small select group of idiots that want to try and demonize these people. And for me, we 100% need to get away from that, because the people I've experienced in this community have been fantastic. So I agree that people need to be a bit braver and a bit stronger on this issue. And I think quite often, probably because of our political system, to be honest, you need to form these kind of big coalitions of people in order to win certain seats in certain parts of the country. It probably would be an easier argument to have in the likes of America, where they have a presidential system. However, obviously it's much more toxic in that part of the world. And you've got that because you've got the likes of Trump, who peddles this narrative because he thinks that it solidifies his base. And I I want to kind of peel back the veil on these politicians to see what they actually think, because I think some of the things that Trump has probably said, like, he doesn't genuinely think that, but he knows for a fact that his base will respond to it. You know, the likes of the people in the south of America will respond to that. And, you know, I know that you're going to Washington, so I hope that you'll be able to kind of
change
speak
the world.
Sense.
Make America great again. Yeah. Or something
make
like that.
Make America fair again. Like, make America decent again.
Well, that's it. That's a really good point, isn't it? We don't want greatness. We just want fairness and decency. That's all that trans people are asking for. And they're asking for it in the streets, in their homes, allowed to have homes, in employment. They don't want to be sacked because they're trans or because they've come out. They want it in schools. I feel so sad. One of the questions that Piers said was, well, look, you don't ever see trans men winning in sports. He said, and why is that? It's because they were assigned female at birth and they're weaker. And I didn't get a chance to respond, but actually, the reason why you don't see trans men winning in sports is because trans people don't have the opportunities, the basic opportunities, very, very often. Access to education, access to living as men, access to hormones that would help them live their best life, and so therefore they're disadvantaged. They don't get those training opportunities. Can you imagine having trans people having the opportunities to become elite tennis players and what have you? It doesn't happen because they're so busy struggling the gender battle that's facing them, and they don't have those opportunities. So no, it's not because they're assigned female at birth. It's because our society is not accepting them properly. And that's what we should be debating. That's what we should be doing.
So I've got something that quite important to me, because my background is like, so I'm very proudly like working class from a council estate and grew up with my nan and granddad. And I wonder how many trans people are from those communities that have either come out later because of that, or not had the opportunities, or, you know, not had the time or the space, or actually like the comfort to be able to go, well, hang on a minute, who am I as a person? Because growing up from that background is very difficult within itself. So I don't know, have you experienced anyone who's come from that background?
Yeah, so many. And I think sometimes of the people who do make it through to healthcare, especially the younger people. And so many of them have been so articulate, eloquent, intelligent, bright. And I used to think, is it something about gender identity that it only happens more often in articulate, intelligent, bright people? And then I'm like, no, those are the ones that are able to put their case forward and get there to help. And on the other hand, I've seen nans and granddads be the best support in the whole world for that trans kid. Don't you dare call her he. This is my granddaughter. And again, it makes my hair curl, because it's so that support from nan is the best ever. But it's difficult. It is difficult, and also schooling as well. You know, if you're in an area where there's a very big, very rough, very tricky school, it's not a safe place to come out.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know, you just hide it.
Yeah.
And I've seen, you know, kids, they hide it very well. And what makes me really sad is that they go further. Like you were talking about the army earlier. You know, they have as many tattoos as they possibly can to be as masculine as they possibly can. They do football and they do rugby and they do everything masculine, and they go and shag women to be as masculine as they possibly can, just to hide the fact that actually they're a woman, and no one must see it. And it's really sad. And do you know what, Carl? I wish that the T people came out when all the LGB people came out in the 80s. I wish they'd come out at the same time. So we're not doing it now. We were doing it then. And I kind of feel that we'd have all got over it by now.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you on that. And I think, like, fundamentally, like, on this issue, I think that people who've been against or critical or anti-trans or transphobes at this time will look back in 10, 20 years and think, God, like, I'm so sorry the way I acted. It was terrible. And it will be the same as the LGBT movements, you know, a few decades ago, where people were against that or were anti-gay. And then now they're thinking, God, what was I doing? And you just wish you could kind of get a bit of a time machine, don't you, and show them people the future and go, you're going to regret doing this, whether it's to like your family member or your friend or someone that you know. And I think these people that do it, like, I mean, have you ever watched the film V for Vendetta?
No, I don't think so.
So there's kind of a specific moment in that just sticks in my mind at the minute, and it's kind of, they're doing these experiments on people, and this woman thinks that she's doing it like for the right reasons, like because it's for doing it for the government. And in the end, this guy that's had the experiments done to him, it's a bit nerdy. He becomes like a bit of like a super strength and stuff like that. And then he comes back to get back at these people that have done it to him, and she's like really remorseful, and she says, I'm really sorry, like I didn't understand what I was doing, and I thought I was doing the right thing. And she said, is it too late to apologize? And he says, never. And I think that's a beautiful moment. The only thing I would say with the trans community is, because of like the levels of suicide or self-harm, like there probably is a moment where it's too late to apologize. So I really hope that as a society we can acknowledge like the existence of trans people, and we can make sure that we treat them with the respect that they deserve, and not in 10 years look back and think, God, what were we doing?
I agree. And I was on X the other day, a few months ago actually, and there was a bloke on there just writing the most awful stuff. And then he DM'd me as well, calling me all kinds. And I'm like, why? What is your beef? And I clicked on his picture to see who he was, and he's there with his two young sons. He's there, like, a picture with him on there. And I'm like, how can you do that? You're a father to these two boys, and your account's got pictures of them, and you're writing this stuff, which will be there forever.
Yeah.
Always, the Internet Archives are never going to go away. We're always. But it also reminds me of the war. Like, when I was at school, history was the most boring thing in the world, remembering all those dates and stuff like that. But then when I was a bit older, I actually became interested in learning about history and the war. And I was thinking, how did those people do it? How did they put the people in the gas chamber and press the button and then clear out all the stuff afterwards, all the clothes and, those awful pictures that we see? And then what I learned was actually there was a chain. So that person did that bit, and then that person did that bit, and that person did that bit. So the person who brought them in on the train didn't press the button. It was just a chain, and it was all. And I think that's exactly what happens now. So that dad who can say stuff like that is so far removed from a real trans person and the hurt it actually causes every day that it feels like nothing, but it's not nothing, is it?
Yeah. And so I couldn't have put that better myself, honestly, because it's then those tiny kind of micro steps, isn't it, that lead us to kind of to fascism or to hatred. And I think we're potentially seeing that in this country at the moment, because it only takes those reasonable people to start thinking, well, actually, like, I don't like trans people because they're getting all this attention, or I don't like immigrants because they're getting our houses. And, when you look at the stats, that's actually not the case. But it's those micro steps that lead us towards what could ultimately be like a fascist government and a fascist state. And this is what the moments for me that I thought the Conservative Party cannot be allowed near 10 Downing Street again is when Kemi Badenoch came out and said, we've got to leave the EHCR. And I thought, what absolute awful opportunists the Conservative Party have become. And we need to, for me, it's my job and the Liberal Democrats' job to wipe them out and make sure they never come back again. And like obviously try and stop reform as well. And what I don't understand is the EHCR is there to protect us against the worst traits of our own government, potentially. That's what we said we would do to Europe to stop like Nazism or fascism ever coming back again. And the fact that we've got mainstream politicians talking about that, if we leave the EHCR, like trans people be thrown under the bus, immigrants will be thrown under the bus, the gay community will be thrown under the bus. And like, for me, it's Liberals' job, and it's the job of progressives and people such as yourself to actually say, hang on a minute, this is a nonsense. We can't be sure that there aren't going to be people in this country or other countries that aren't going to throw minorities under the bus. So we've got to make sure that things like the EHCR are there and are there in perpetuity.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, when we talk about the immigrants, like, as you say, and it's very easy for us British people to say, there's no room here. We've got no room in our country. We can't let you in. You have to go back. And you immigrants, and that just using the one word for all of you, it takes away any personality. Actually, we should go and see them and see that these are real people who've come from, like, why would you get on a boat and risk the life of you and your family? It must have been awful what you were doing. But the fact that we dename them and just call them a group, immigrants or trans people, we need to see them. And the first step is visibility and education. And we need to see the real people behind this who are suffering. And for trans people, we've got to make it a safe place to show their faces, because if they can't show their faces, they can't be visible. So we need to just create the safe space, and actually online as well. And this thing, protected beliefs. I would like to have my gender critical beliefs protected, please, so I can go off and spout shit all over the internet and say that they're really awful, and then it makes them that they're not allowed to come out, and it's not a safe place to come out, so they just go and hide again. Oh my goodness, we need some rules. We need some basic, decent rules.
But it's fair enough protecting like free speech, isn't it? Like, but I don't think that should mean freedom from consequence, or it shouldn't be protecting hatred. And I think that's where people have kind of made, they've purposefully or willingly tried to change the narrative. So it's not free speech anymore. It's free to spout hatred. Yeah. And I think that's what's more so in America, I think. In this country, I still hold out hope that people are decent, and actually, this is the worst thing actually, isn't it? That the very small minority of people are the ones that shout the loudest. Yeah. And if you were a trans person on social media, you would probably look at it and go, wow, there's so many people out there that hate me. But actually, what I find with Britishness in particular is the vast majority of people are very decent, want people to live a good, happy life, and don't really care like if you're one way or the other or how you identify. They just want you to kind of, in the main, probably just be polite, isn't it? As in nice. Britain, exactly. Nice. If you've got manners, if you queue up, then you're fine. And I think we need to kind of have an acknowledgement and make sure that like trans people and people that we want to protect know that it is a very small minority of people that spout that hatred. Yeah. It's not the majority, because in my opinion, the majority of people are really vastly nice decent people.
I call it the seesaw. So I think that, and the haters call people like me trans radical activist. And I'm like, no, I'm not a trans radical activist. I'm just a nice person being nice to trans people, But I call it my seesaw. So the people who get it and understand it and are happy to speak up about it on that side, that small percentage, that whatever on that side. And there's so many people in the middle. Yeah. And at the moment, I think they're being a bit quiet. And what I'd really like them to do is speak up and say, actually, that's not very nice. Or that comment, I think I'm going to delete that comment from my post because that kind of language is not okay. Or I don't think it's nice to talk to people like that. And and I would love these people just to speak up a little bit louder. But at the moment, they're not quite sure what to say. And but those nutters on that side, they can. But you're right, Carl. It's very small, but very loud.
Yeah.
And we need to shift the middle people along a bit.
Yeah.
So what's the answer? What can we do? What are you going to do? What can I do? What can Liverpool do? What's the answer?
So Liverpool should be the place that leads on trans rights, because everyone says, don't they, that Liverpool people are the most decent people. And if you come to Liverpool, like the Scousers are always really welcoming. I think Scouse people have got the biggest hearts, and if there is going to be a place that leads the fight for trans rights, it's going to be Liverpool. And I know there's a project at the moment that we're looking at to do a rainbow crossing. Now that's still in the pipeline. We want to make that happen, and hopefully we'll make it happen together. Yeah. And I think that will say a lot to the rest of the UK, that Liverpool stands firm with not only the LGBT community, but with the trans community as well. Second is Sahir, that I'm a trustee of, want to set up a committee that monitors LGBT issues, but also trans issues. And I think they've asked you, Helen, to come on board with that and to advise them on how best we tackle those issues that are facing the trans community. And the third is that if I run Liverpool City, which I hope that I will, you'll have a leader of the council that believes in the rights of trans people, and that will openly defend them. And I've been clear from the start, Liverpool should be a place that welcomes everyone, that has the big heart for everyone. And the council, when I run it, will make sure that not only happens, but we go above and beyond for those people as well.
I mean, I think people hearing that will just be so full of warmth. That's all that we want. We want the future to be bright and inclusive for everyone. Sounds so cliche, but it's just true. It's 100%. Just true. And I think, things like murals, things like shop windows that have a badge or a flag flying high, it just says that you matter and everyone matters here and everyone's included. And it's only small, but it just shows that we understand, and it's really important. And I think the other thing that's really important is that the people on committees are speaking the voice of the trans community and other minorities, of course. But no one's allowed, if they don't either have experience of the community themselves or are part of the community themselves or have worked in the community deeply, rather than just have a textbook view of what the community might or might not need. And that's a problem. We need the voice of the community
100%.
In there to tell us how to do it. And I will bring all the voices that I've heard in my career over the last 10 years. I'll bring all of their voices with me to help shape the future. Because we've got to make it. Before I die, I've got to see this world much better for trans people. And I hope I'm not going anywhere soon, and I hope it happens really quickly.
You certainly don't look like you are.
We've got to get there. We've got to get there fast. Yeah. And actually, sometimes I think that the gay community, it feels like it took quite a long time. But I think we've got more resources now. We've got the internet, which gives us more access to people and change. And I think we can get there quickly if we can just shift knowledge and attitudes, which is the work that you're doing, and which is brilliant. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And I've got to say, Helen, honestly, like some of the work that you're doing, like I know that it's taken its toll, and it does, because you've got all those people that will attack you for it. So I take my hat off to like the work that you've done. And one thing that one philosophy that I've always had as a leader in politics is that I certainly don't know everything, and my job in the main is a facilitator for experts such as yourself, for people who have lived that experience in the trans community, to be able to be empowered and to tell their story. So whatever I can do to help you or help those people, I'm more than willing to do. I'm more than willing to to put myself on the line to do that.
Well, this community is worth it. I mean, I've said so many times that in my career as a doctor, I've never worked with a better group. So such lovely people, such so humble. And like we said earlier, they're not asking for that. They're just asking for that, and that's what we need to. Well, I want to work towards that, but
we'll get there eventually.
For now.
Yeah, definitely. It was lovely to speak to you, Helen. Thank you very much for chatting with me.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has helped you, and I think you're going to like this one that's on the screen right now.